State Writing Assessment Beyond, writing from prompts. So will you guys be taking your state test in the next few weeks or months?
In February.
In February, okay. And so have you done some work already with prompts or looking at example prompts?
Yes.
Okay, great. So hopefully some of this will be a review, some of it will be new material, and at the end I'm hoping that maybe writing from prompts won't be too scary. Does anyone's face look like this when they see a writing prompt? They're like, no! Hopefully not. But what does your face look like when you think of writing from prompts? So when you think of writing from prompts, what are the first few words that go through your mind?
Yay.
Yay, that's excellent. Okay, so I hear kind of a mix. I hear some yay, some nah, whatever. That's not quite a word, but I won't point that out too much. So whatever your face looks like when you think of writing from prompts, the one point which I'd like to make clear is that writing from prompts doesn't have to be hard. It's very commonly thought, oh, it's really difficult, you have to do a lot of work, but today there's just a couple tips that I'm going to show you, and then we'll work through some prompts, and it should be fairly simple. But first, before I forget myself, I should introduce myself. My name's Adora, and when I was 7, then I published my first book. It's called Flying Fingers, Master the Tools of Learning Through the Joy of Writing. And it was a book of short stories, and more recently I co-authored this book of poetry called Dancing Fingers with my older sister Adora. And so I really enjoy writing, but like many of you, I've had to take state tests before, and as you know, on many of them there's these writing prompts, and I heard that a lot of students were having difficulty with these and maybe needed some help, so I did some research, I looked at some different ways to respond to prompts, and so I hope you can sit back and enjoy. When you first read the prompt, what do you do? What goes through your head? Could we have one person read?
Okay.
What they wrote.
What they wrote? Okay, very good. So you read the prompt very carefully. You might look for key words, and you're probably also thinking about the purpose of the prompt. So what do I mean when I say purpose?
The reason.
The reason, the goal, what you're trying to do. So the purpose of the prompt is essentially, it's not only the purpose for them to write it, but it's also what your purpose is in writing a response. So when you look at a prompt and it's asking you to do something, then you think, well, are they asking me to do this to persuade, to inform? What exactly is my goal here? What am I trying to do? So we'll talk a bit more about that. Ask yourself 3 questions. What is my purpose, or what am I trying to do? What is my goal? Who is my audience, and what is my perspective? What do I mean by audience in this context?
People that listen to you read it.
The people that will be listening to you read it, or will be reading what you wrote. Very good. What about perspective?
One point of view.
Your point of view. Very good. How you look at something, maybe what your opinion is. So purpose, audience, perspective. What is my purpose in writing this? Is my purpose to persuade? So then it would be persuasive writing. To inform or explain, it would be expository writing, or to entertain, and that would most likely be narrative writing. So looking at some of the past prompts that you've gotten, both 8th grade, 5th grade, different levels, then it seems like there have been expository prompts, narrative prompts, different kinds of prompts asking you to do different things. So to review what those words mean, maybe some of you have seen like advertisements. That would be examples of persuasion. They're trying to persuade you to buy something or to eat a certain kind of meal. What about informing? When you walk into class, when your teacher tells you something, when you watch a presentation. These are all examples of when informing or explaining is going on. And then maybe when you tell a funny story to a friend or you read a funny book, then that would be an example of entertaining. So those different purposes that we have through our writing you want to make sure that you understand what the purpose is when you respond to the prompt. So why would this be so important to understand your purpose? Well, let's say that you read the prompt and you don't get what they want you to do. Then you might start writing something and it wouldn't really be going anywhere, and it might not be really answering the question or the prompt directly. So if you don't understand the purpose, then what you write might not end up serving the prompt goals, and you might get a lower grade because it wasn't quite on topic. And we'll see an example of that kind of prompt later on. But you might also have more than one purpose. Sometimes if you start to write something, like if you wrote an email to a friend, you might have all three purposes. You might inform your friend that your parents just bought a huge trampoline. You would entertain your friend with a story of how you already bounced off the trampoline and into the yard. And you might persuade your friend to come over to your place after school. So you see how this example, it shows how you're informing, entertaining, and persuading at basically the same time. Probably you guys have told stories similar to that, or said things in an email. So look at each of the following assignments and name what the author's main purpose is. What are they trying to get you to do? To explain, to persuade, or to entertain? Let's say you get a prompt, however unlikely it is, and let's say your prompt is write a letter to some slimy aliens that lists the reasons why they shouldn't destroy planet Earth. To entertain, to inform, to persuade.
Persuade.
Very good. Persuade. That would be our main purpose in this. Writing a letter, convincing them, and it's sort of like in math when you're reading word problems and you have some of those words that clue you in onto what kind of operation you use. It's sort of like that with looking at a prompt. When you see something like convince, listing the reasons why to do something or not do something, it's often persuading. So writing letters to slimy aliens would be persuasion. What about writing instructions for building a go-kart?
Persuading.
Inform. Yes, very good. So the reason that this is informing rather than persuading is that, have any of you ever read a how-to manual? Raise your hand if you've read a how-to manual. Maybe when you're helping your parents set up a toaster or something. I see some raised hands. So if any of you guys have ever been, putting something together from instructions, then you'll know that the instructions most likely, their major goal isn't to say, hey, this is an really awesome product, and go out and purchase this, because you've already purchased it. The main goal of those instructions is usually to help you put it together. So writing instructions for building a go-kart would be an example of an informing. The purpose would be to inform. So when you look at the prompts that you get on your state test, then you want to have an idea, is it to inform, is it to persuade, is it to entertain? And that will help you as far as making each sentence you write work toward that purpose. So would anyone like to tell me about some of the prompts that they got last year?
None of these have taken this test. Sixth grade.
Oh, I see. Do you only get the writing test at 5th and 8th?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's not every year, right? Okay, I should have gotten that when I looked at the state test writing page. It said 5th and 8th. Okay, great. Yes.
Yes, last year's prompt was they were pulled into their favorite book.
Okay, being pulled into your favorite book. So, what would be the purpose of that kind of prompt? You get pulled into your favorite book and you write a story. I remember seeing that. What would be the purpose? To inform, to explain, to persuade, or to entertain? Entertain. Very good. Yeah. Again, when you look at a prompt, it's generally fairly easy to tell. What are they trying to get me to do? And when you write a story about getting pulled into your favorite book, it's probably not to convince someone about something. It's to entertain. So the purpose is usually fairly easy to find. One that might be a little trickier to figure out is who is my audience? So who is your audience when you're taking a state test?
I guess the people reading it and grading.
Yeah, the people grading it. So And what makes it a little tricky about that is that you don't really know the people who are grading the state test. You don't see them. You probably don't know their names. They're sort of invisible to you. So when you think about your audience in the context of someone that you don't know at all, then you have to make sure that because they don't know you and you don't know them, that you explain certain things maybe a little more than you might to, say, your best friend. Knowing your audience is very important. So let's say that you were writing a letter to your brother or your sister about your mom. You probably wouldn't need to go in and explain what your mom does for a job, how your mom is doing, because your brother or sister, unless they've been away for a while, probably know your mom and know all those things. If you're writing an essay about your mom for class and not every single classmate knew about your mom, then you would want to provide those kinds of details. So if you were writing about your mom for a state test, on a state test, you would, again, need to provide a little bit more information than if you were writing it for your brother or sister. The important thing to remember is that your audience might not know that much about you or your life, so you want to give them some context and explain certain things that they might not understand. For instance, if you're making a reference to a game or that awesome day, you would want to explain what game, what day, things that wouldn't be immediately clear if I didn't know you. And even if your audience does know you, then when you're writing on a test, let's say that you somehow know every single person who's going to be checking all the tests. When you're writing the test, it's important to introduce each topic and explain who you're talking about, because that's the kind of writing that you'll be expected to provide. So let's say you're mentioning your friend Annie for the first time, and you write something like, Annie rode around the corner on her BMX. Might be a little bit hard to figure out, well, who's Annie? Is she your sister, your friend, classmate, who? What you might want to say instead would be, Annie, my friend from down the street, rode around the corner on her BMX. And if you were writing for an older audience or a group of people who aren't particularly into biking, then you might want to explain what a BMX is. Annie, my friend from down the street, rode around the corner on her small BMX racing bike. So the amount of detail that you provide is kind of dependent on who's going to be reading it. Let's practice this one. How can we make this a little more clear for our audience? I live in Harrisburg with Tyler, Jesse, Nana, Snowball, and Mom. Every day I ride to Burke Hills. I sit next to Pacey and Catherine. We are learning about quarks. Mrs. Huxley says I'm a natural. Afterward, I go over to Sasha's. So let's first identify some of the issues here. What's not clear reading this?
It doesn't really tell who people are.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't really tell who people are. Who's Tyler, Jesse, Nana, Snowball, Pacey, Catherine, and Sasha? These are all names that are thrown out here, but you're not really quite sure about who they are. But we can understand a little bit from this to try to rework it. So let's open up the new page and start typing. So I live in Harrisburg with, who do you think those people are?
Family.
With my family. So who do you think, as far as family relations, who do you think Tyler, Jesse, and Snowball are?
Brothers.
Snowball would probably be a pet of some kind. And Nana would probably be her grandmother, so sort of an affection here. So with my family, my brothers, Tyler and Jesse.
Crazy.
I don't even.
And what kind of pet should Snowball be?
Snake.
My snake, Snowball. Okay, sure, why not? And my mom. Okay. Every day I ride to Burke Hills. What kind of place do you think is Burke Hills? Retirement facility? Probably not. Well, let's look for some context clues here. Every day I ride to Burke Hills. I sit next to Pacey and Catherine. We are learning about quarks. Mrs. Huxley says I am a natural.
School.
Most likely it's a school. I mean, it's possible it could be a hunting place, but it's a little less likely. I write to Burke Hills, my school, where I sit next to, who do you think Pacey and Catherine are? Her worst enemies? Friends? Yeah, usually my friends, Pacey and Catherine. We're learning about quarks. Mrs. Huxley says, I am a natural. Okay, so that part's, it's basically what they're learning about, so it's pretty clear. Afterward, I go over to Sasha's. Who do you think Sasha is?
A friend that lives down the street or something.
He lives down the street. Okay. Oops, I got cut off. But okay, so you see how from this version where it's like, well, who is everybody? Then we get this very clear explained version. I live in Harrisburg with my family, my brothers Tyler and Jesse, Grandma, we call her Nana, my snake Snowball, and my mom. Every day I ride to Burke Hills, my school, where I sit next to my friends Pacey and Catherine. We're learning about quarks. Mrs. Huxley says I'm a natural. Afterwards, I go over to my friend Sasha's place. She lives down the street. So it's very easy to change this. It's very easy to make it more explanatory. But a lot of us end up writing something like this. And whoever's reading it will be like, well, who are these people? So it's very easy to fix that. How many of you have done pre-writing before? You probably have some experience with pre-writing if you've ever written an outline or maybe diagrammed some of your ideas. So pre-writing, how much pre-writing you want to do, it's kind of dependent on how much writing it is or how long it is what you'll be writing. But let's say that you want to develop your ideas for a persuasive essay to your parents about how computer games teach kids valuable skills. So maybe if you've ever tried to persuade your parents, like buy you a computer game or video game, then you've been like trying to persuade them, oh, it'll help me improve my skills. This is an essay, and that should be pretty helpful. So let's say my main idea: computer games teach kids valuable skills. I have to actually prove that somehow. My parents aren't going to buy me a computer game or understand my point if I just say, Mom, Dad, computer games teach kids valuable skills, and that's it. I have to give some proof. So I would maybe come up with some reasons, like kids who get on the computer to play games, develop basic computer skills, and then have reasons to back that up. Computers develop visual skills, have a study or something to back that up. Computer games encourage thinking, and have 2 examples to back that up. So I start out with a main point. I have my 3 supporting details, and for each one of those details, I might have an example, a story, or another supporting detail. So in this example of an outline where you're drawing it out, it really helps you see how everything's connected. So tip number 2 is build an outline. It can help you organize your ideas, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like a very large spider-like one. Then it can be a pretty simple one, like in your head. This is an example of a very formal outline. This is one that I was doing for a research paper of mine, literary analysis, and that one probably not required, so you don't have to be too scared. But it can be helpful to have a main point, some of the supporting details, and supporting details for those supporting details. So something kind of in between this and that. Paragraph number 1 will be your introduction. So you state the main idea of your essay, and this is good for persuasive essays. It also works a lot for informative essays. Introduce the reasons that support your main idea. So you'll have something that you're trying to state, like computer games are educational. They teach kids visual skills and basic computer skills and encourage kids to think. So you see my main point, computer games are educational, and then the supporting. So paragraph 2, paragraph 3, paragraph 4, and paragraph 5, my conclusion, would summarize those main points in new language. So this is basically a regular outline for a 5-paragraph essay. And so if you have a prompt, for instance, like explain the slimy aliens why they shouldn't destroy Earth, this structure would be very good. You have your introduction, you have your 3 reasons, and reasons to support those reasons. It's a lot of people have compared it to sort of building a house, and your structure, you want to support everything. And then paragraph 5, your conclusion, it might end with an image, a call to action, a suggestion, a scenario, a quote, a restatement of why the main idea is important, So for example, next time you're about to scold your kid for wasting time on the computer playing games, take a moment to consider what kind of skills you want him or her to develop. So you see here, I wouldn't have been able to come up with a conclusion like that, and I wouldn't have been able to have much of an essay had I not thought about it, supported my reasons. And I think that you guys can probably agree that having something with reasons that are backed up by other reasons is probably a lot more powerful than just saying, hey, computer games are awesome. And should you get a prompt like that, it would probably get you a first. So I would definitely encourage thinking about your ideas, laying them out either in your head or on paper before you start writing, because that way you'll have more of an organized idea of what you want to do. So for instance, I got this off of the TCAP writing assessment prompt for 09 to 10. The writing situation was most students have a person they want to be like someday who is your role model. Before you begin writing, think about what qualities your role model has and why these are important to you. Now write an essay telling who your role model is and explaining why. Support your reasons with specific examples and details. So here is a prompt response, which didn't go into much detail. It said, who is your role model? Is a role model helps make models into clay and art. Okay, so this is an example of where the responder maybe looked at the prompt and didn't quite understand the purpose, where the prompt was going. And sort of, instead of explaining the role model for them, explained what a role model was in art. So reading it carefully, understanding the purpose would have definitely helped. On the other hand, this is a response that got a 6 out of 6. I think that's nice, you can go 1 through 6. So this was what this person said. My mom opens a sliding door carefully and yells, girls, come inside. It is getting dark. I've always looked up to my mom like she is a superhero, and I want to be just like her when I get older. Who is your #1 role model? This is a tough decision to make, but if you really think, it can be easy. I want to be just like my mom when I grow up because she puts family first, she cares about everyone, and she is an amazing cook. So already in this introduction, we're seeing very well organized ideas. Does anyone know what a hook is? A hook in an essay? You can raise your hand.
Grab your attention, get your attention.
I'm sorry?
Something that gets your attention.
Yes, very good. Something that gets your attention. So in this case, it would be the scenario over here. My mom opens a sliding door carefully and says, girls come inside, it's getting dark. So it's sort of it's pulled right from life. You read it and it's almost like you're starting to read a story because it has that little scenario. And then if you go into over here, then you see her main point. So she really looks up to her mom and she wants to be just like her mom. So that's the main point that she's trying to then support with why she wants to be like her mom. Because she puts family first, she cares about everyone, and she's an amazing cook. So you see how there are reasons right here laid out, and then she goes on to support them. So my mom puts her family first, even if it means turning down things she really desires. I have 3 sisters, so money has always been tight, but she holds us all together as a family. So she would tell a story. From this little snippet of this person's response, then you're able to see they have a very well laid out introduction, they have their 3 reasons, they're going on to support those reasons with stories. So that's an example of when they got the full score. And I think that, again, using those steps of understanding the prompt's purpose and answering the question being asked, and making sure that you understand the question being asked, thinking about the audience, how much you need to explain. For instance, in this response, we don't know her mom, so if she just said she cares about everyone, she always puts family first, and you'd be like, okay, sure, I'll take your word for it, but we don't know your mom, so the fact that she went on to explain how her mom was all of those things shows that she was thinking about her audience. And then coming up with supporting details or reasons to support perspective or opinion. I'm assuming it was a girl who wrote that. It might have been a boy, but to support the perspective or opinion in the prompt response, then that was also something. So now, when you write then how many of you think about the words that you're using, the language that you're using? How many of you guys think about that as you write? I see a couple raised hands, but even for me, as I write, then it sometimes, when I go back, I might think, okay, I could say this better, but oftentimes when we write, we aren't really thinking a whole lot about the words that we're using. And that's something that we have to try to do when we're responding to a prompt, for instance, because choosing the right words can make a lot of difference. For instance, let's say you're using some fairly general words, then you might want to use a specific word instead. If you're saying that something is nice, then it could be much more specific than that. You could turn nice into exciting, peaceful, safe, beautiful, amazing, colorful, cozy. So from one word, nice or good, you could take a bunch of words that get much more focus. So replace general words with specific words, like dog to poodle, tree to elm, nice to friendly, loud to booming. Because if you're talking about your nice friend and how nice your mom is and how nice everyone is, then it's a little bit up for grabs as far as, are they friendly? Are they considerate? What exactly, how are they nice? Adding specific details can really help. So in the response we looked at, then she was adding specific details. She was having that little description at the beginning showing her mom, and then later she was also going into detail about her mom and each of the qualities she represented. So let's say you start writing, the beach is beautiful. You could maybe add something like, the beach is beautiful, the sand sparkles in the sun, and the air smells like salt and shipwrecks. Just an idea as far as for a narrative prompt. What about, how about my cat is crazy? How can we make that more descriptive and specific? My cat is crazy.
My cat is crazy enough to be in a mental hospital.
So let's think about, my cat is crazy. What exactly makes this cat crazy?
It jumps from the ceiling fan.
It foams its mouth.
If it foamed at the mouth, it might be more like it had rabies, which would be good. But okay, maybe it foams at the mouth when Jeopardy comes on TV, and because it's so random behavior. What else might a pet do that would be crazy and maybe not diseased, but crazy? Follows. It's in love with the laser pointer, always following it around, no matter what.
Where it is until it hits the wall.
And is the cat a she or he?
She.
I hate all that. She.
Run into the wall a couple of times.
Jumps on the ledge.
She's also jumped onto what?
The ceiling fan.
Let's have if I could hear one person, it's a little hard when everybody's talking at the same time. Sorry.
Ceiling fan.
The ceiling fan,
When it is on the string.
when it's spinning and shrieked for hours afterwards. We can't tell whether it's because she's happy or dizzy. Alright, so this is just and you don't have to expand this much, and you could expand more, but if, let's say that your prompt is to write about your pet, or what makes your pet special, for instance, then it might be appropriate to expand. If your prompt is something totally different and you're just mentioning your cat as an aside, then you might not want to expand so much. So deciding whether to expand and how much to expand, it really has to do with what is the main point of your prompt. So let's review our goals. from the rubric, this is very common if you look at, what are tests trying to get you to do? Use language effectively by exhibiting word choices that are engaging and appropriate for your intended audience and purpose. What does this mean?
Don't choose foul words.
That would be a good idea. Yeah, you might not help your score if you were swearing a lot. But what else? What else does this mean?
Choose your words. What else it would mean is that if you were to use appropriate language and a language that would get your reader more interested, that would higher your score. If you use boring words and bore it out, then you're going to be like, this person has no talent and needs to have a lower score, needs to learn how to write better.
Yeah, very good, and you really went into detail there. When you use better words, and as well as making sure that the extent to which you explain things as well as appropriate for the audience, then that's showing good word choice. And another thing is not to be repetitive. So if you're repeating yourself a lot, if you're using the same words quite a bit, then that might not fit the engaging and appropriate idea. So yeah, try to make sure that your language is your best. Write for your audience. Explain who or what you're talking about. Define key terms, like for instance, BMX racing bike. For dinner, we ate Milanese, the Mexican version of chicken fried steak. If you have a term that maybe not everyone in the world will know, explain it. And tip number 4 is make a point. What do I mean by make a point? When you're making a point in writing, what you're doing.
Know what you did.
Make it sound conclusions.
Well, when you make a point in writing, then you have a point. You have something that you're trying to get across. Like for instance, my mom is a great person, or I really look up to my mom, like we saw. And then you have your supporting details. My mom cares about family, etc. So when you guys write, or even when you guys are telling things to your friends, you kind of do this a little bit. You might be like, this so-and-so happened, I had an awesome time. Why did you have an awesome time? Because I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this. So even when we don't think that we're making a point, or even when we aren't really out to, then sometimes we'll kind of support what we're saying with details. So make a point in your writing, especially when you're doing persuasive writing. It's very important, and with many other kinds of writing as well. And so interesting writing makes a point, and in order to create powerful writing from a prompt, you need to turn your topic into a point or main idea. For instance, in the prompt about who do you look up to, who's your role model, then you turn that into a point. Topic idea, squirrels. Main idea, flying squirrels make great pets. Topic sentence, flying squirrels make great pets because they are intelligent and entertaining. Maybe your prompt has something to do with squirrels, or maybe your prompt is like, what kind of animal do you think makes the best pet? And you might come up with something like squirrels. Here is another example of a prompt, one of the role model responses from 8th grade last year. And so the respondent said, as I sit here and ponder over who my role model really is, many names come to my weary mind. It could be a singer, an actress, or maybe even one of my extraordinary friends in my day-to-day life. Although many of these people are good role models, I chose Amelia Earhart over them all. Why Amelia, you might be asking yourselves? Out of the many reasons I could have chose her for, I picked the following. She never gave up her dreams, succeeded in her dreams, and showed America and many other countries that a woman could do a man's job. So what are some good things about this response?
Basically what she mainly did was go into deep detail and explain why that she would admire Amelia Earhart so much. And instead of making it boring, she actually made it seem both entertaining as well as informal at the exact same time.
That's a really, yeah, exactly. And especially if you look at the tone which she's using, then she's having almost like, it's not like a very formal essay, it's almost like a conversation between who's reading it and her. Because she's saying, I'm sitting here, I'm pondering, so she's actually bringing you into what she's thinking. And that makes a really good hook, because you're actually seeing, oh, she's thinking about this, she's showing her debate process. Well, it could be a singer, an actress, one of my friends. And although many of these people are good role models, I chose Amelia Earhart. So she's she shows why she chose Amelia Earhart. She justifies the point that she's making about why Amelia Earhart is her role model. She shows these reasons, and she uses good language. She's, sitting here pondering many names from my weary mind. It's a great hook. It's very engaging. So this is another one of the ones that got a 6. And so something that's definitely very good to do is compare some of the ones that got, say, a 2 or a 3. So not necessarily they probably understood the purpose, but maybe wasn't developed enough, and compare it to one that got a 5 or a 6, and you'll really see the difference there. Because one has developed their ideas, they've gotten the supporting details, and one has maybe made a point, but they haven't supported it. So it's a good comparison. Make sure that you're writing answers to who, what, when, how, or why of the prompt topic. For instance, so this is actually very similar. I hadn't even seen the prompt with the role model when I wrote this. Write about your hero or heroine. Why is this person your hero or heroine? So the person who, the why, you want to talk about the who and the why. What about write about a time when you were brave? How were you brave? So it's how, when, you might throw in other things as well. So it's very easy to identify those and answer those parts of the question. And this one is something that you do after you've written and after you've put out all your thoughts, then reread it, revise it, proofread your prompt response to catch mistakes. And it's very common to see some of the ones that got lower scores were because they had some spelling errors in them. So it's something that's very easy to avoid. For instance, this one, it looks fairly good. My role model would actually be LeBron James because he is very good at shooting. He skipped college and went pro, and he has a very good personality. But already in the first few lines, then you see some of the spelling errors. And it turned out, if you have 1 or 2 spelling errors, it doesn't count against you too much. But when you have them in many sentences, they start to add up, and it can bring your score down. So this one ended up getting a 3. I believe 3. And one of the reasons that they cited was because there were many spelling errors. So revising, proofreading, catch those mistakes. Then this one, also very good handwriting, written a lot. Someday I would like to be Pat Summitt because she's a basketball coach and has millions of fans. She has a record with 1,000 wins. So you see how they're developing it. They're going in with supporting details. But what happens is that you read through this.